I've always listened to my mom. When she told me to rank first in class, I never settled for second. When she told me to keep a low profile, I built my company to IPO status. Without anyone knowing, the CEO was a college student. Just when I thought my life would continue this way, my biological parents found me. Mom said, "Sweetheart, they've lived in luxury for over 20 years, while you fed pigs in the countryside and suffered. They owe you so much. Once you go back, you'll be a proper heiress. You can't let anyone disrespect you anymore." But on my first day home, the fake heiress demanded I serve her tea and learn my place. "Sister, country folk don't understand etiquette. You need to kneel when serving this tea." Under my entire family's gaze, I kicked the teacup flying. Scalding water splashed across her face. Before she could scream, I backhanded her so hard, she spun 3 times. Looking at my stunned biological parents, I smiled. "Are you ignorant of proper manners, or just born to be a doormat? I'm the eldest daughter of the Reynolds family. You're just a cuckoo in the nest. And you think you can lecture me about etiquette?" "Dad, Mom." She hit me. "My face hurts so much. Am I disfigured?" Sophia clutched her face, screaming. Mr. Reynolds slammed his hand on the table. "Emma Hart, have you lost your mind? That's your sister. You come home and immediately resort to violence. Is this the upbringing you learned in the countryside?" Mrs. Reynolds rushed over to embrace Sophia, then turned to shout at me. "Apologize to Sophia right now. You wild thing. If I'd known you were this crude, I never should have brought you back. Wild thing." I paused. "Mrs. Reynolds, weren't you the ones who asked me to come back?" Sophia shrank into Mrs. Reynolds' arms, trembling all over. "Sister, I just wanted to teach you some high society manners, so you wouldn't embarrass Mom and Dad in public." How could you treat me like this?" She cried pitifully, looking utterly wronged. Mr. Reynolds' chest heaved with rage. Get out of my sight. The Reynolds family has no room for such a vicious daughter." Instead, I pulled out a chair and sat down. "Get out. This house bears the Reynolds name, and Reynolds blood flows through my veins. Who should really be leaving here? Don't you know? And don't talk to me about manners. My rule is simple. Whoever pisses me off, I make their whole family miserable." Marcus came rushing down the stairs. Seeing the scene, he charged straight at me without a word. "Emma Hart, how dare you bully Sophia?" He raised his hand to strike me. I swept my leg out. Marcus lost his balance and fell flat on his face. The servants didn't dare breathe. I crouched down, looking at my biological brother sprawled on the floor. "Brother, no need for such a grand greeting. I can't accept such a bow." Marcus scrambled up, his face flushed red. You shrew." "Dad, Mom, throw her out. Sophia is my only sister." Sophia cried even harder, sobbing as she spoke. "Brother, don't send sister away. It's all my fault. Shouldn't have upset her. As long as sister calms down, you can beat me to death. I don't mind." What a performance. Mrs. Reynolds was moved to tears, pointing at my nose. "Look how understanding Sophia is. Now look at you. You're nothing but a troublemaker. From today on, you'll live in the attic without my permission. You're not allowed downstairs for meals. And hand over that welcome card. Let's see how arrogant you were without money." My card. I looked at the card Mrs. Reynolds had given me during the reunion, supposedly loaded with $10,000, threatening me with his pittance. I tossed the card aside with a sneer. "Keep it if you want it." With that, I dragged my suitcase upstairs without looking back. Behind me came the sound of Mr. Reynolds smashing his cup. Outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. That ungrateful girl should have been left to die out there. I paused at the staircase landing and glanced back. If it weren't for my adoptive mother's repeated instructions to stay here for at least a week and experience my biological family, I could have torn the roof off the Reynolds house tonight and shown them what real rebellion looks like. I slept in the attic until late morning. No servants came to wake me, and no one brought breakfast. Perhaps this was the Reynolds family's idea of punishment. When I came downstairs, the family was gathered around the dining table for lunch. Sophia sat beside Mrs. Reynolds, an ice pack on her face, delicately sipping bird's nest soup. Seeing me descend, the atmosphere at the table instantly froze. Marcus slammed down his chopsticks. "Who said you could come down?" "Mom said you're not allowed to eat." I walked straight to the table and pulled out the chair next to the head seat. "This is my home. I'll eat wherever I want." I picked up chopsticks and grabbed the largest piece of spare rib. Mrs. Reynolds wrinkled her face in disgust. "No manners at all. Who taught you to use chopsticks like that?" "That's Sophia's favorite, sweet and sour pork. Put it down." I popped the rib into my mouth, chewing loudly. If it's her favorite, then I definitely need to eat more. Sophia sat down, her spoon looking at me timidly. "Sister, if you're hungry, There are leftover buns from last night in the kitchen. These dishes were specially prepared by our chef. They won't suit your taste. I laughed coldly. What? Afraid I'll eat you out of house and home. Don't worry, I can afford to pay for this meal. Just then, Mr. Reynolds emerged from his study, holding a document. Seeing me, his expression darkened immediately. Perfect timing. Sign this. He threw the document in front of me. Property waiver agreement. It stated that I voluntarily relinquished all inheritance rights to the Reynolds family assets, retaining only a monthly allowance of $5,000. As compensation, the Reynolds family would pay for my college education. I flipped through it and couldn't help but laugh. $5,000? Are you dismissing a beggar? Mr. Reynolds looked at me coldly. For someone raised in the countryside, $5,000 is more than enough. Sophia is a socialite raised in luxury, with high expenses. You can't compare yourself to her. As long as you sign, the Reynolds family will always have a place for you. Marcus chimed in from the side. Just sign it. Don't be ungrateful. Sophia has sacrificed so much for this family. She deserves everything. What have you contributed to this family besides blood relation? I closed the document, and in front of them all tore it to shreds. Mr. Reynolds trembled with rage. What are you doing? I stood up looking at them coldly. I told you I don't want the Reynolds family scraps. But whether I want them is one thing. Whether you offer them is another. What belongs to me, even if I throw it in the trash, I won't give it to outsiders. Sophia suddenly burst into tears. Sister, are you still blaming me? If you want everything, I'll give it all to you. I won't fight. Dad. Mom. Don't force sister anymore. I'll just leave. She made as if to run. Outside, Mrs. Reynolds grabbed her, tears streaming down her face. Where are you going? This is your home. The one who should leave is this ungrateful wretch. Mrs. Reynolds turned to me, her eyes venomous. Emma Hart, don't push your luck. Since you won't sign from today forward, you won't get a single penny from this family. Let's see how long you can keep up this attitude. I shrugged. Fine, we'll see. I was in my room, preparing a business proposal targeting Reynolds Corporation, ready to teach them a lesson, when Marcus suddenly burst in with several servants and began ransacking the place. Emma Hart, hand it over. I watched coldly as they threw my clothes everywhere. Hand over what? Marcus sneered, still playing dumb. Where's my sister's bracelet? You took it, didn't you? Search. Search thoroughly. With a clatter, a bracelet glowing with red light fell from my clothes. Sophia followed behind. Walking in, seeing the bracelet, she immediately covered her mouth. It really was sister who took it. Sister, if you liked it, you could have just asked me. Why did you have to steal it? Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds rushed to the doorway. Seeing the scene, Mr. Reynolds pointed at me, his finger trembling. What a disgrace. What a disgrace. How could the Reynolds family produce a thief like you? I looked at the bracelet on the floor, then at Sophia's smug face. This frame-up was laughably crude. I walked over and picked up the bracelet. This piece of junk, the quality is worse than street market goods. You think I'd steal this? Sophia's face paled. This is a limited edition Cartier worth $300,000. $300,000? I scoffed. Then I smashed the bracelet hard against the floor. Crack. The fragile gemstones shattered into pieces. Everyone froze in shock. Sophia screamed and rushed to gather the fragments. My bracelet, Emma Hart. You'll pay for this. I dusted off my hands. This kind of trash takes up space even in my room. Want to frame me next time? Use something actually valuable. Mrs. Reynolds' eyes turned red with rage. She called for bodyguards to restrain me. Not learning proper behavior at such a young age. You'll only bring trouble to the Reynolds family later. Crack. The cane in her hand struck me again and again. The pain was searing, but I gritted my teeth and didn't make a sound. Good. Keep hitting. I'm remembering every bit of this humiliation. The debt of giving birth to me. I'm repaying it in full. Mrs. Reynolds froze at my expression. Mr. Reynolds waved his hand impatiently. Enough. Lock her up. 3 days without food. Let her reflect properly. I was truly locked up for 3 days. On the 4th day, Sophia brought in a bowl of spoiled porridge. Sister, you must be starving, right? I especially saved this for you. Eat up. She threw the ball on the floor. There's a charity gala tonight. Mom and Dad are taking me. They didn't want to bring you after all looking like this. You'd just be an embarrassment. But Dad said since we brought you back, we should at least let people see you. So they don't say the Reynolds family is heartless. She looked at me mockingly, her toe nudging the bowl. Eat. How else will you have the energy to embarrass yourself with that? She clapped her hands. Several maids walked in carrying clothes. It was a servant's uniform, the kind worn by the lowest-ranking maids. Sister, all your clothes are too tacky. Wearing them out would scare the guests. This outfit is plain, but it suits your temperament perfectly. Wear it tonight and follow behind me, holding my train, serving tea and water. Perform well, and I'll have Mom give you food." The maid surrounded me with mocking smiles, reaching to strip my clothes. "Miss, pardon us. This is for your own good, so you don't go out looking shabby and embarrassing yourself." I suddenly stood up, though I'd been starved for 3 days. The aura I unleashed in that moment made the maid stumble backward.
"Get out."
Sophia's expression changed.
"Toast."
"Refused means drinking.
"The penalty."
What are you waiting for? Strip her. I'm the eldest daughter of the Reynolds family. If anything happens, I'll take responsibility." The maid swarmed forward. I grabbed a shard from the broken bowl and pressed it against the nearest maid's throat. Blood immediately seeped out. "Who dares move?" The maid screamed and retreated. Sophia was also frightened by my ferocity. She hadn't expected me to still have this much fight. After 3 days of confinement. You psycho, fine. You won't wear it. Then go in those stinking rags. Let's see how you hold your head up in front of all of high society." She stomped away in her heels. Furious, I dropped the shard and collapsed weakly on the floor. "Want to see me humiliated?" I pulled a micro-communicator from my inner pocket. "Tonight, I'll show the Reynolds family what real high society looks like." "Liam." I croaked into the micro-communicator, my throat dry, but my voice steady as ice. "Boss." The crisp, professional voice of my executive assistant crackled back instantly. "I've been monitoring your vitals through your smartwatch. 3 days of starvation. I was 2 minutes away from breaching the compound with a tactical team. Stand down on the breach. But mobilize the styling team, the medics, and Vanguard Capital's legal division." I pushed myself up from the floor, kicking the shattered porcelain bowl of spoiled porridge into the corner. "The Reynolds family is attending the Starlight Charity Gala tonight. They want me to be their entertainment." A low, dark chuckle echoed through the earpiece. "I assume we are burning the Reynolds Corporation to the ground then? Hostile takeover. I want their stock plummeting by the time the appetizers are served." "And Liam?" "Yes, boss. Bring the Aurora diamond. It's time to remind them what a real heiress looks like." 30 minutes later, the iron gates of the Reynolds estate opened. From my attic window, I watched Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds, Marcus, and Sophia pile into their Bentley. Sophia was draped in an aggressively gaudy sequin gown, looking like a disco ball dipped in cheap perfume. "Emma can walk," I heard Mrs. Reynolds sneer to the butler. "If she doesn't show up, tell the guards to lock her out for the night." The moment their taillights faded down the driveway, the sky above the estate roared. The Reynolds servants rushed to the courtyard, staring in dumbfounded terror as a sleek, matte black stealth helicopter touched down on the meticulously manicured lawn, tearing up Mrs. Reynolds' prized rose bushes in the process. 3 armored SUVs smashed through the front gates simultaneously, surrounding the mansion. A dozen men in tailored black suits stormed the house. The head butler tried to intervene and was immediately shoved against the wall by a bodyguard twice his size. Liam stepped into the foyer, impeccably dressed, adjusting his gold rimless glasses. He looked at the trembling servants. "Clear the upper floors. Now." When my bedroom door opened, Liam stepped in, followed by a medic carrying an 4-bag and 2 top-tier international stylists lugging garment bags. "Nutrient drip, immediately," the medic said, expertly sliding a needle into my vein. Within seconds, a rush of cold, revitalizing energy flooded my system, washing away the fatigue of the 3-day fast. "You look like hell, boss," Liam noted, though his eyes burned with fury at the sight of my bruised wrists. "I've felt worse," I replied cold-bloodedly, sitting up as the stylist descended upon me. "Give me the satrep." Reynolds Corporation relies on a singular $500 million supply chain contract with Vanguard Capital to stay solvent. Liam read from an iPad as a stylist expertly massaged a revitalizing serum into my face. "They've been begging for a meeting with our CEO, you, for 6 months. Mr. Reynolds plans to corner Vanguard executives at the gala tonight to finalize it." "Perfect," I smiled, the expression sharp enough to cut glass. 2 hours later, I stood before the full-length mirror. The country bumpkin was dead. Staring back at me was the ruthless, 21-year-old billionaire who had built Vanguard Capital from a dorm room project into a global monolith. I wore a custom-fitted midnight blue velvet gown that hugged my curves, featuring a daring slit and a plunging back. It was elegant, predatory, and screamed old money. But the centerpiece was around my neck. The Aurora diamond. A 60-carat flawless blue diamond suspended on a web of platinum, worth more than the entire Reynolds estate combined. "Let's go crash a party," I whispered. The Starlight Charity Gala was the crown jewel of the city's high society. The ballroom was a sea of crystal chandeliers, flowing champagne, and fake smiles. Mr. Reynolds was currently sweating through his tuxedo, desperately trying to corner David Chen, Vanguard Capital's vice president. "Mr. Chun, I assure you, Reynolds Corp is perfectly positioned for the merger, Mr. Reynolds groveled, holding out a glass of champagne. David Chun, who was secretly checking his watch for my arrival, offered a tight, dismissive smile. The decision ultimately rests with our CEO, Mr. Reynolds. She is particular about the moral fiber of the companies we absorb. Nearby, Sophia was holding court with a group of wealthy socialites, showing off a new diamond ring. Oh, it was nothing, she simpered. My parents just love me so much. They said bringing my biological sister back was a mistake. She's terribly uncultured. In fact, she's probably wandering the streets outside right now, too ashamed to come in. I heard she stole your Cartier bracelet, one socialite gasped. She did. Sophia lied smoothly, dabbing a fake tear. But I forgave her. Country folk just don't know any better. Marcus stood nearby, puffing his chest out. If she steps out of line tonight, I'll personally throw her out. Suddenly, the music stopped. The heavy, gilded double doors at the top of the grand staircase didn't just open. They were violently shoved apart by 4 massive bodyguards in Vanguard Capital uniforms. The murmurs in the ballroom died instantly. Every eye turned upward. I stepped into the light. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. The midnight blue gown trailed behind me like liquid shadow, but it was the aurora diamond catching the chandelier's light that blinded them. Who is that? Someone whispered. Good God, is that the aurora? I thought it was locked in a Swiss vault. She's breathtaking. I walked slowly down the marble stairs, my heels clicking in the dead silence. Liam walked half a step behind me, radiating lethal professionalism. At the bottom of the stairs, the Reynolds family stood frozen. Mr. Reynolds' jaw was practically on the floor. Mrs. Reynolds' eyes bulged out of her skull. Sophia dropped her champagne flute. It shattered, the sound echoing loudly. Emma? Marcus choked out, rubbing his eyes as if hallucinating. I didn't look at them. I walked straight past my biological family as if they were trash on the sidewalk, heading directly toward the VIP section. Sophia snapped out of her shock, her face twisting into an ugly mask of pure jealousy. Her brain, too small to comprehend the reality in front of her, immediately jumped to the only conclusion her petty mind could grasp. Guards. Security. Sophia shrieked, her voice shattering the elegant atmosphere. She lunged forward, pointing a trembling, manicured finger at me. Arrest her. She stole that dress. She stole that necklace. The entire ballroom froze. Mrs. Reynolds suddenly snapped out of her stupor, her face flushing with embarrassment and rage. She marched toward me, grabbing my arm. You wretched girl. How did you sneak in here? Whose clothes did you steal? Take them off this instant before you ruin our family completely. I looked down at the hand grabbing my arm. Then, I looked up at Mrs. Reynolds. Remove your hand, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried a sub-zero temperature that made the nearest guest shiver. How dare you speak to me like that, Mrs. Reynolds shrieked, raising her hand to slap me, just as she had done with the cane 3 days ago. Before her hand could even begin its descent, Liam moved. He grabbed Mrs. Reynolds' wrist with bone-crushing force and shoved her backward. She stumbled and fell hard onto her rear, her designer dress riding up in a humiliating display. Mom, Marcus roared. He charged at Liam, fist raised. You bastard, touching my mother. 2 Vanguard bodyguards stepped forward, grabbed Marcus by the lapels, and slammed him face first onto a cocktail table. Glasses shattered. Marcus groaned, pinned like a pathetic insect. Emma Hart, have you gone completely insane? Mr. Reynolds bellowed, his face purple with rage. He turned to the hotel security, who were rushing over. I am Thomas Reynolds. This girl is my runaway daughter. She is a thief and a trespasser. Throw her and these thugs out immediately. The hotel security guards hesitated, reaching for their radios. I wouldn't do that if I were you, a calm, authoritative voice echoed. David Chen, the vice president of Vanguard Capital, stepped out from the VIP section. He ignored Mr. Reynolds entirely, walked straight up to me, and bowed deeply at a perfect 90-degree angle. Boss. You're late, David said respectfully. The ballroom descended into the kind of silence usually reserved for funerals. Mr. Reynolds choked on his own spit. The boss? Mr. Chen, what are you doing? This is Emma. She was raised on a pig farm. She's a high school dropout. Liam adjusted his glasses and stepped forward, pulling a remote from his pocket. He aimed it at the massive projector screen at the front of the stage, which had previously been displaying the charity's logo. With a click, the screen flared to life. It displayed a massive corporate profile, a Forbes cover. The headline read, "The Shadow Prodigy, How 21-Year-Old Emma Hart Built Vanguard Capital into a $1 trillion Empire." Allow me to formally introduce you. Liam's voice echoed through the microphone he had commandeered. This is Miss Emma Hart, founder and CEO of Vanguard Capital, majority shareholder of the Aegis Tech Group. board member of the Global Financial Reserve, and unfortunately, the biological daughter of the Reynolds family, a genetic flaw she has managed to overcome. Someone in the crowd fainted. Flashbulbs from the press suddenly erupted like a thunderstorm, blinding the room. Sophia's legs gave out. She collapsed to her knees, staring at the screen in horror. No, it's a lie. She's a country bumpkin. She didn't even know how to use chopsticks. I stepped forward, looking down at Sophia, who was trembling on the floor. You really thought I didn't know how to use chopsticks? I laughed softly, crouching down to her eye level. Sophia, I ate that spare rib because it was your favorite, and I wanted to watch you cry over a piece of pork. It was amusing. Just like watching you frame me for a $300,000 Cartier bracelet was amusing. I stood up and looked at Liam. Liam, what is the exact value of the Aurora diamond I'm wearing? $75 million, boss, Liam announced clearly. I looked back at Sophia. If I wanted to steal, I wouldn't touch your cheap pocket change. I'd buy the company that made it and fire the designer for having terrible taste. Mr. Reynolds was hyperventilating. He suddenly realized the apocalyptic scale of his mistake. Vanguard Capital, the company holding the life or death contract for his entire legacy. Emma, sweetheart, Mr. Reynolds stammered, completely changing his tune. He forced a sickeningly sweet smile, stepping over his pinned son to reach me. This is a misunderstanding. Why didn't you tell us? We are family. We. Family? I cut him off, my voice echoing through the silent room. I snapped my fingers. Liam pressed another button on the remote. The screen changed. It played security footage from the Reynolds estate. Clip 1. Mrs. Reynolds beating me with a cane while I stood in silence. Clip 2. Marcus destroying my room. Clip 3. Mr. Reynolds throwing the property waiver in my face. Clip 4. Sophia kicking a bowl of rotting porridge across the floor, telling me to eat it. The high society elites in the room gasped in genuine horror. Whispers of disgust ripped through the crowd like wildfire. Disgusting. Child abuse. And they tried to play the victims? I'm pulling my investments from Reynolds Corp tomorrow. They're monsters. Mr. Reynolds' face drained of all blood. He looked like a corpse. Emma, please turn that off. We can talk about this. I'm your father. My father, I said, stepping right into his personal space, my eyes burning with a cold fire, died when I was a baby. My mother, my adoptive mother, raised me. She told me to rank first, so I conquered the academic world. She told me to keep a low profile, so I built a financial empire from the shadows. And she told me to give you people a week to see if blood meant anything. I checked the diamond-encrusted Rolex on my wrist. I made it 4 days. You people aren't a family. You're a disease. David, I commanded without turning around. Yes, boss. The $500 million supply chain merger with Reynolds Corporation, cancel it. Mr. Reynolds screamed, lunging forward. No, you can't. We're over-leveraged. If you pull that contract, the banks will call in our loans tomorrow. We'll be bankrupt by noon. I know, I said, a cruel smile touching my lips. I shorted your stock 3 hours ago. By the time the market opens tomorrow, Reynolds Corp will be worth pennies. I'm going to buy your company for the price of a ham sandwich, fire you, and turn your corporate headquarters into a public restroom. Mrs. Reynolds began sobbing hysterically, crawling on the floor toward me. Emma, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Sophia manipulated me. She told me you were evil. Please, forgive your mother. You locked me in an attic for 3 days without food, I said softly, looking down at her pathetic, tear-streaked face. You wanted to teach me high society manners? Let me teach you one. Actions have consequences. I turned to Marcus, who was still pinned on the table, weeping. Marcus, I said cheerfully, that tech startup you've been bragging about? Aegis Tech just bought all your patents. You're infringing on our copyrights. My legal team filed a $50 million lawsuit against you 20 minutes ago. Have fun in court. Finally, I walked over to Sophia. The proper heiress was a shivering, broken mess on the floor. Sister, she wailed, trying to grab the hem of my dress. I was just jealous. I was scared you'd take my place. Please, I'll give it all back. I'll leave. I smoothly stepped out of her reach. Oh, you don't have to leave. The Reynolds won't have a house by tomorrow anyway. But don't worry, Sophia. I wouldn't leave you empty-handed. I gestured to Liam. He stepped forward and dropped a crumpled, slightly damp piece of cardboard onto the floor in front of Sophia. It was the $10,000 welcome card Mrs. Reynolds had tried to humiliate me with. Take it, I said, echoing the exact tone she had used on me. How else will you have the energy to embarrass yourself tomorrow when the debt collectors come? Sophia stared at the card, let out a piercing, hysterical shriek, and fainted dead away onto the marble floor. I surveyed the wreckage of the Reynolds family. They were utterly broken, crying, ruined, and humiliated in front of the entire city. It wasn't just revenge, it was an execution.
Liam.
David, we're leaving. The air in here smells like garbage, I announced, turning my back on them. As I walked back up the grand staircase, the crowd parted for me like the Red Sea. No one dared to breathe, let alone speak. Just before I reached the doors, Mr. Reynolds let out one final, desperate wail. Emma, you can't do this. You have Reynolds' blood in your veins. You owe us your life. I paused at the top of the stairs and looked over my shoulder. I told you on day one, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the silent hall. My rule is simple. Whoever pisses me off, I make their whole family miserable. Consider your debt of giving birth to me repaid in full. I walked out the doors, leaving them to their ruin. Outside, the cool night air was refreshing. My convoy was waiting. As I slid into the back of my Maybach, my phone buzzed. It was a private number. I answered it. I saw the stock market futures for Reynolds Corp. A warm, familiar voice said through the speaker. I assume the trial week is over, sweetheart. I leaned back into the leather seats, a genuine smile finally gracing my face for the first time in days.
Mom.
You were right. They were a waste of time. My adoptive mother chuckled softly. I knew they would be, but you needed to see it for yourself to cut that psychological tie. Are you coming home? I am, I said. By the way, Mom, you told me they were just a moderately wealthy family. But their background check showed they originally got their seed money 20 years ago from an anonymous benefactor. There was a brief silence on the line. Well, my mother said, her tone suddenly shifting from warm maternal figure to something dangerously sharp and infinitely powerful. I suppose I owed them a little something for abandoning the greatest investment I ever made. But since they broke the toy I bought them, I suppose I'll just have the International Bank freeze the rest of their offshore accounts. I blinked. Even after all these years, my adoptive mother's true reach still terrifyingly surprised me. I'll be home for breakfast, Mom, I smiled. Good. We're having sweet and sour pork, ranked first in the world, just for you. I hung up the phone, looking out the tinted window as the city lights blurred past. The Reynolds family thought they had invited a cuckoo into their nest. They didn't realize they had dragged in a dragon. And now their nest was ash.